my own. You fill every heart with such desire. Every kiss you give set soul on fire. I give myself.
Okay, here we go.
In sweet surrender, my one and only love.
All right, now I can.
The very
All
thought
right.
of you.
Okay, that's enough of me right now. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I will say hello, the hellos, ladies.
Okay.
Um, so hi.
Hello
Hello,
there.
darling.
Hello there. And welcome,
Hello.
welcome everyone to Cathy Segal-Garcia's Noontime Hang. And I decided to put her feet to the fire and make her the guest of her own show. I made that inquiry a while ago, and Cathy, you so graciously accepted to do
That's
this.
true. And Kathy Cousins also pushed for that. So the two Kathys pushed the third Kathy into it. And then, I thought of Catherine and Sonny Wilkinson doing the interviews. So
Yeah,
here they are.
here we are.
Catherine's going to spend about 15 minutes with us, and then Sonny's going to take over. Hi, girls.
Hi, love.
Hello. Hello, sweetheart. I'm so happy you're doing this because for me, I've I've always, I've only known of you in terms of our close friendship over the last 2 years, I think it is, but I've always known of you because of the way you galvanize so much of the jazz community and the jazz singers and just your overall support and embrace of this journey of being self-expressive, of being a musician. So can you tell us, how did you decide? I guess my first question is, how did you decide to start, even like what got you singing? What was that? How did you decide to start singing jazz, and did you start with jazz in particular, or did you start in a different genre?
Well, I have to say I was kind of born into hearing jazz because my dad was a sax player and he was into big bands and jazz, and my mom had been a singer, and at that time, so the pop music was standards, so she was into standards, and I had two older sisters who were 4 years older than me, and they sang and one played piano. So as we grew up, that's what we were all. The three of us were always performing together. So I remember when I was, one of the memories I have when I was very young was painting the living room with my dad listening to Ella Fitzgerald. And
Mm.
so I was always listening to that music. And I did play a few instruments when I was younger, but, and then I think, so jazz was probably the first music that intrigued me. And my parents didn't really listen to other music. They didn't listen to classical. They didn't listen to the only other music that started happening in my household was my sisters, and being 4 years older than me, they were, of course, listening to pop, and so I started getting into that.
Mm-hmm.
At one point, though, I felt like I had to decide: did I want to go towards Woodstock people or jazz people? Which music did I really want to get serious about? Because I could have easily gone into the Woodstock whole area, the Carole Kings and the Joni
Yeah.
Mitchells, and but I decided to go to jazz.
Well, either choice would have worked for you. So
Mhm.
that's a great way to sort of talk about your environment that you grew up in. And can you talk a little bit about um, I'm going to be jumping back and forth with your timeline. So
Sure.
you started to sing jazz and perform live with different bands. Like, how did you find your first community of musicians?
Yeah, I think it was in high school. I had a guitar player.
Hmm.
Yeah, and so we that was my it was a small community, but that was my first community. Besides, school plays and that kind of thing. But yeah, and then that was rock, more acoustic kind of rock music, not jazz. And then I chose to go to Berkeley. I was in Boston,
Hmm.
and it was fascinating to me, the thought of going to Berkeley. And I played flute at the time too, and they didn't have vocal. And so I went for flute and arranging and comp. I was very young though, so I was like 19 or something. And so, but I did get really particular things out of it. And one was the community. I really got a feeling of community there. Uh, and it was my own community, my own choices, and musicians who I was working with and rehearsing with. And so, yeah, I was at Berkeley.
Wow. Well, for me, your appreciation of community and your appreciation for the importance of community is it still prevails. I mean, even now. So I'm going to jump around a little bit. So can you talk about how you began to um, have I remember you at the Sportsman's Lodge
Yeah.
here in Los Angeles in Studio City, and what an incredible environment you provided for so many singers and musicians who just wanted to perform and hang out and know of each other. Can you talk a little bit about what made you decide? Because that's a huge undertaking to commit to your time and energy, to provide this platform for so many others. Can you talk about why did you do that?
Yeah, it's funny. And you guys probably know this. I'm sure you've done things steadily, for a while, and you don't necessarily feel like it's so difficult, right?
Hmm.
I mean, it was definitely part of my life, but I didn't feel like it was difficult. But so what happened was this was between husbands, and my boyfriend was Harold Bennett, who was a woodwind player. And he had a lot of great ideas, but he didn't have the follow through, the actions of following through. So he got this idea to have a jam session at the Sportsman's Lodge. But he didn't follow through. And I liked the idea. I thought, oh, that's a great idea. So I approached the Sportsman's Lodge, and the man said, he said something like, "Do you think it'll work?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, man, yeah, definitely. I think a lot of people want a place to play." So at that time, Sportsman's Lodge was really cool. The lounge had this big dance floor, and there was no stage. So we would set up. My favorite place was setting up against the window that overlooked the ponds, that they had at the Sportsman's Lodge. And so, and the area was really large. So we had the initial trio, but then when people would come and sit in, it was really easy and fun to just, for people to come up and be part of basically the stage area. And what happened was it took about 6 months to really get going. And then we were there for 7 years, and then we were other places for about 8 or 9 years. But I'm telling you, man, sometimes, seriously, there might be 200 people there. Yeah, and it was so much fun. I have the best, most fondest memories and um, of people coming together. Like we would have moments of 10 singers coming up and singing, like one singing Little Old Lady from Pasadena or something, something really fun. And all of us would be hugging each other and harmonizing and laughing. Oh my God, it really was a terrific time. And a lot of people met people
Yeah.
from that
And
session.
how many nights a week did you have this?
It was just one, but it
One
was
night.
every week. Yeah,
Yeah.
Wednesday nights.
Well, I guess you're right. Difficult. It's probably way too harsh a word. I think what I'm just so appreciative of is that the commitment that you
Yeah,
have had in this regard, the way in which you are just steadfast about bringing people together, which is why I wanted to interview you, because you're such a beacon in this community of ours, you know, and you just in talking about it just now, I mean, you just lit up, you know, with the
yeah.
memories of it and the sense of fellowship. And I think that's such an important quality that we need as individuals. We need to have a sense of our community, of fellowship, of humanity, and you just do it so effortlessly. And I just really want to again tell you how appreciative we all are of who you are and what you continue to do. Can you talk a little bit about, since so much of it was impromptu and at times improvisational, can you talk about some of the more challenging moments, like that you remember, like, you know, the show must go on kind of thing? You had to.
Sure. That's actually a good question. Well, first and foremost, you know, uh, you know, setting up because I had to bring the PA, and in those days I had that. Remember the Shore PA columns, lady? Sonny, I think you had one of those, right?
At JBL's.
It was like 6 feet high, right? And so, you know, bringing them, schlepping them in my car, bringing them in, setting up. I almost always had someone tear them down with me, so that was nice. But that was that was one thing. Um, the other thing, you know, was sometimes people who came and sat in, you know, there was this one guy who he played, I think he played flute, and he just didn't know, he didn't understand that he was soloing over the song. So he would solo to a point and then stop. And then I would go over and I'd say, you know, there's more to the song, you know, you should learn the song. And he laughed and brushed me off. And then there was another guy who was a sax player who, so he, why did he, I must have, you know, because I kind of took it on myself to lovingly tell people things, you know, if there was something that I thought could benefit, you know, could behoove them, right?
Mhm.
And I mentioned something about what he was doing, what he was playing, and he looked at me, or maybe it was even just coming up one at a time, you know, instead of everybody blowing. I think actually that was what it was. It was blowing while I was singing or something. I said, you know, don't blow. Don't blow while I'm soloing. It's my solo, you know. And he looked at me like this, and then he went like this. Yeah, okay. And then he left. He packed up and left. And I was like, okay, well, bye. And then, sorry, the one last thing I'll say is I'll never forget when my friend Sharon Winters came up to me and said, wow, it's unbelievable that they're closing. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, I was just talking to the guard, and he said, you know, they're closing their doors tomorrow. I was like, what? Nobody told me anything.
Oh,
Nobody.
wow.
I mean, they were paying me. Why didn't somebody just go, gee, we really should probably tell Cathy that the door,
That's
you know,
amazing.
nothing. So anyway.
Wow. Do you remember, Cathy, one time I was visiting you and I got to come to the Sportsman's Lodge.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I hate jam sessions. I just hate them. And the primary reason is because there are only a number of tunes and sax players generally play 75 choruses or more. Sorry, sax players out there. But you organized those jam sessions in such a way that everybody was involved and it turned into a really musical experience because of the way you had it configured. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's interesting. I I remember part of it and part of it I don't. I remember people coming in. Nick Mancini came. That was kind of the first jam he came to when he got to town. He brought his vibes to a jam session. Wow. And so he asked me if he could come in. I said, "Yeah, come on, right here. Here's a space." And then I think I would bring up, even though I was very open, when I kind of read what was going on. If it really invited a lot of people up, I would kind of get into making that happen. But usually I would introduce one person, at a time to come up, and to sing and or play. And I can't remember like thinking about it in any other way, really.
Yeah.
Wow.
Did Fish to Birds come out of the jam sessions at
No,
Sportsman's Lodge? No. Okay.
no. Fish to Birds originated after a workshop with Rhiannon. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I just want to again, unfortunately, I do have to leave you at this time, but I'm here in spirit to support this incredible gift that you're providing by sharing so much of who you are and
Thank
your great stories and history of just incredible. I mean, I feel so fortunate to have met you, and I know that your place in this world is just light filled, Cathy. You're
Thank-
amazing.
Thanks,
Such
Kat.
a beacon.
Thank you.
So to be continued, and thank you for being here.
Thanks,
Love
Captain
you.
Bostic. I love you.
Love you too. Bye. Bye.
Okay, Sonny. It's
Oh, hello,
you
my
and me.
Wasn't that just lovely? And it's so true. May I say a few words about you before we take over?
Yes.
Um, I have known you since we were in our early 20s. We've been through big musical adventures together, spiritual adventures together, learned so much. And one thing and during my time in LA, there was a group of us that completely supported each other, and instead of being catty and competitive, we would go to each other gigs, we'd share charts, we'd help lift each other up. And I think that even then, your essence of community and sharing and caring for the world at large was so present. You
Mm,
sort of you lifted us up all, and thank you for all you're doing. My gosh, in the world.
thanks. You forgot to say that we went through husbands together too.
Oh my
First,
God.
first husbands.
Oh, did we ever? Oh my gosh, Cathy. That's probably not fit for airtime though, is it?
No.
No. Well, I have so many questions to ask you, but I thought it might be fun. I've got another computer sitting here,
Okay.
and I see there are just some lovely questions here. Do you mind if we address some of them? Because
No, I loved it. I love it.
and it definitely leaps around, but I love one of these. This is from Taylor Hatch. Out of all of your records produced, is there one that you're most proud of, or several?
That's actually a good question.
Hmm.
Um, Proud of,
Yeah.
I don't know. Let's see. I don't know if I'm just wondering if I'm proud of any. I might use a different word, Taylor, than proud. I might use a word like fond of. Sonny, you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
right? Um,
It's hard to
and
remove yourself from all of the process.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the first record was a real work of love and gathering of people that were in our community at the time. It was like 1980 or something. let's see, was I married? I think I was married, yeah. And I had all these different people on it, some of whom
Was
are
that was
passing on.
that
That
point
was
of
point,
view?
yeah, point of view. So Gus and I had written a lot of material for that. And in fact, I think maybe all but one song, which was When You Wish Upon a Star,
Yeah.
arranged by Bill Orr. But so that was, I'm really fond of that because it was the first product and it had these beautiful people on it. And the engineer was Ray McGinnis, who was a very special individual. And
Hey,
um,
Kathy, for the folks out there, do you mind if I read the people that were on this? Because it was like a slap back in time for me,
yeah,
right? So, uh, originals by Gus and Kathy, Frank Severino, John Hurd, Octavio Bailey, Bill Orr, Rick Helzer, Armando Compian, Art Rodriguez. I used to babysit his children. Tommy Breckline, Wayne Johnson, Russell Ferrante, Jim Lacefield, Jim Cowger, Lauren Pickford, Clay Jenkins, love him, Paul Yanamora, Gary Willis, and Scott Colley. I mean,
I know.
hello, nice lady.
But we were all coming up. Well, except for John Hurd and those guys, and Frank Severino. But I mean, most of us were just working musicians, including Russell Ferrante.
Yeah.
And but yeah, I can't really let go of that record in my heart. And actually a lot of the music was timeless. Especially Rick Helzer did some outstanding arrangements.
Yeah, I have to, I love that record and Rick, what a beautiful writer, man, and
Oh yeah,
player. And spirit. What a lovely human being, Rick Helser.
very, very lovely. Yeah. So that was,
Granted, he ended up, I don't know where he is now, but he was at San Diego State
yeah.
teaching down there with the lovely singer that taught down there. I can't remember her name. Do you remember her name?
Um, and you're not talking about Kevin.
No,
Who?
no. And Bill Yeager was the head of the department down
I don't remember who was the singer, the singing teacher there.
there. Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. I mean, yeah, his arrangements in particular were timeless. Really beautiful. And so that was the first one, and then it was a while before I did my second one. I can't remember all the orders, but I might have done Song of the Heart next because I started going to Japan, and my Japanese manager Booker put me together with Philip Strange, who was living there and teaching for him at a school that he owned, and we got Peter Erskine and Mark Johnson in Chicorea's studio. So it was like
At Mad Hatter.
at Mad Hatter.
Yeah, when it was still his. Yeah.
And Phil had the the choice of what the Steinway or the what's the German?
Bosendorfer
Yeah,
with the extension on the bottom.
yeah.
Remember that? It had like 12 extra keys or some strange thing like that. Yeah. Yeah.
And that, of course, was a mind-blowing experience for me, because the quality of music was so beautiful, and yeah, it really, that was special.
Do you know, okay, there's another connection between you and me. Phil Strange went to Arizona State, which is where I went. Phil Strange was one of my sister's very close friends. And I knew him from Arizona. How about that? Is it a small
I forgot that. I forgot
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, he and I, Phil and I traveled so much together in those days. I don't know, we were on the road together over 15 or 20 years probably. And we
Right.
recorded a few records together. But that one was quite beautiful, and that was, yeah, it was just that was very special for me because it was, Mark and Peter, having Mark and Peter part of your project was just, it was
Man. You know
beautiful.
what else though too? I know you're going to talk about a lot of these, but having known you from when we were children, essentially, we were in our early 20s,
Yeah.
starting off doing musical. I mean, we all develop our musical strengths, right?
Yeah.
And watching you through your progression of your CDs, to me, one of your biggest strengths is going out and going outside. And that record you did with Phil Strange was Alone Together. You started wrapping this spiral of outness, and it was beautiful and free, right?
Thank you. That record, how that record came to be was Phil and I had been on the road for a month, and we had worked up these are, kind of arrangements. Yeah, really out arrangements. And the thing is, Phil had been living there for a long time, and he was kind of overrun with doing standards and in a standard way. So, so we were doing standards not in a standard way. Remember, there was the cut Misty on there is really, really out. One of my favorites, although some people don't like it because it's so out,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the thing was sometimes we would be on the gig and somebody would come up and ask for standards. They didn't get that we were doing standards.
That reminds me, I have to tell this, reminds me of the joke of the drummer and the bass player and the piano player are supposed to set up and do a gig. The bass player and piano player are late and don't show, so the drummer sets up and people are waiting to dance, so he starts playing away, plays the bossa, he plays a swing, and then this guy sachets up and he says, hey, drummer buddy, play Satin Doll. And the drummer says, what do you think I just played? Oh, that's so great.
I actually haven't heard that one.
So what about, that beautiful new project? It just seems like three poets in motion.
Oh, yeah.
You and Josh Nelson, and of course, one of my favorite players and humans on the planet, Larry Coons, and
Yeah.
and you just seemed like it was this elegant dance of beauty. I talk about that record.
That is one of my favorite ones that I've worked on. I'm not a super big fan of working in the studio. I just never I never hear right and feel, it takes me a long time to get really comfortable. That record was different, and it was definitely because of those two guys. Larry's been my friend forever, and Josh has been my friend for a long time, and they're both such, empathetic, souls, and musically, we really can relate in a certain musical universe. And when I picked the songs with that in mind,
Yeah.
and I picked a few originals, and I picked, some what I call jazz compositions, Claire Fisher and that kind of thing. And there was one point where we thought, gosh, we don't have a swing tune, we should do a swing tune, and so we got out September in the Rain, and we tried to swing, and it was like, no, that is not for this project. So we created a different arrangement of it,
It's very cool.
Yeah,
it is quirky as heck.
yeah,
But for me, listening to you in your evolution, you shine. The outer it gets, the more you shine. It's lovely.
thanks. I do love, as I grow older, I'm loving more and more outer, out, because I love good music anyway, and I love sing. Who doesn't love singing a beautiful ballad with a beautiful accompanist? Who doesn't love that, But the thing that I like about out music is it's a feeling of space, right? There's this space that you enter into immediately, and it's like you have a paintbrush and you're just painting in this space, and other people are doing a dance of that around you. Yesterday I had on Andrea Wolper and Ken Filiano, and we were playing a lot of their music, which is really like that, just great. And there was this one thing where they had a trio with Connie Carruthers, the pianist, and it was improvisational, totally improvisational. And Andrea and Connie were creating, and I was listening, and I actually felt, here's where Ken is going to come in, and he did.
Yeah.
Woo! It gives me the chills just
Oh,
thinking of that,
Isn't that a beautiful concept too, what you're talking about? Because one of the things that attracted me to jazz music was that element that you're just talking about, that the listener is such a key component. And if the listener is involved, you can intuit when things are going to happen. And almost by your energy, you're helping create what's happening on stage,
Yeah, yeah, so true.
Yeah.
That is so true. And I just want to make a point for going to see live music, because that's what happens,
Yeah.
That's why I love to go hear live music, and why I go out a lot, because just sitting there, usually in the front row, right, Dan Davila? Dan Davila and I go out a lot together, and we a long time ago we decided to sit in the front row usually, and it's exactly what you said. You feel like you're co-creating it, and
I
it's
love
a
that.
beautiful thing.
Well, back to your record, Dreamsville. Just first of all, that title track is so hip, you
Mm,
know.
thanks.
But the one that kills me, and I could start crying right now, is is the one for your sisters. The three of us.
Yeah.
And then what Larry did, it's his solo on that, and the way they play for you is just so clear that these are two human beings that know the full intent of that song and hear it, and it was deeply beautiful, and the tears, washing down
Yeah.
the cheeks.
Yeah. I agree with you. That song, the way they played that song was stunning to me. And it was, sometimes when you write, there's a style that emerges within like 3 or 4 songs, like a painter or an artist, right? It's like a series. So that, and actually the other song on there, which was Beyond the Years, those two were in the same period of time, and I liked them. They were almost folky, right?
Yeah.
But the three of us, for those of you who don't know, my twin sisters, who I mentioned before, both have passed away. And there was a moment when I was in the garden, and that song came to me, just came to me,
Wow.
and I started singing it, and I had some of the words, and I knew exactly that it was about my sisters and I. And that song has definitely been hard to sing in public, because if I get into the space of it, then I get into the loss of my sisters, and which a lot of times I don't carry that around with me, and I talk to my sisters, when I feel them, or if I miss them, I just feel like they're visiting me, so I talk to them. But singing that song is a different thing. It's just kind of invites the whole, everything that's involved in it, and it's especially, oh God, I sang it at the release party, and I looked at Aviva Diamond, and I was like, oh, wrong move.
Oh, with the tears streaming down her face, like,
Well, yeah, I'm just looking at her, and her empathy, and I was like,
oh.
and my throat went, eh! It's like, oh God, that was a wrong move. You know how that feels like when you have a song that's really moving to you, and if you
Yeah.
look at someone who you have a special relationship with,
You're done.
yeah, man.
You're done.
Wrong move.
Who was it that said, I cannot. This was a classical singer. I think it was either Don Up. Oh, it was probably Renee Fleming. It's like, how do you cope or think about that very thing? How do you not choke off when she says, "Cool head, warm heart."
It takes
Yeah.
practice, right?
What?
It takes practice to do that, to be
Oh,
able
it
to do
does.
that. Yeah.
Definitely, definitely. Okay, let's see. My other computer just quit, so let's see if I can go.
Okay. Well, while you're looking, I'll just mention, you know, I've done a lot of duo records. I love the duo.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, I love a bigger band too, like, you know, playing with Phil and Mark and Peter was wonderful. But duos are really great. I've done a duo record with Phil, this crazy one called Alone Together. Cho Yun Sung, who's a Korean piano player, he and I did Bohemian together, which we hadn't even intended it to be a record. We just had been working together, and he was going back to Korea, so we decided to go into the studio and put some songs down in 2 days, and it turned out to be a record. That was I really enjoyed that a lot. I felt like he and I had a similar sense of adventure and love for the music, and you know, similar harmonic thing, and so I really liked that. Then there was Joe Diorio, you know, who's like legendary, you know, jazz guitar player, and that was interesting because when first of all we went into a voiceover studio, and it was not, you know, the ideal music recording studio.
I have to say, I remember the sound on his guitar. He had like sort of a constant
Yeah.
wah. And I go, what the heck are you doing? Stop that.
That's another thing. So he had decided that he wanted to use this particular effect. And so, and also every time we would bring a song up that was even hinting at a swing, he would say, you know, let's do this as a ballad. So we ended up pretty much with a ballad record. But then we took it to a good mixer, and we got it sounding better. But that record was literally supposed to go to his Italian record label, and they turned it down because of that sound.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and
That
so
was the only unfortunate thing about that, honestly. It was fun.
yeah,
It was distracting to have that so
yes,
present, right? Yeah.
yes. But many people, actually, Michelle Weir, when that came out, she said, "This is my favorite record of yours," because it was a real beautiful relationship. And what happened was, for years, he actually didn't want to let it out. And then
Oh, I'm
he
so sorry.
had a stroke. Let's see, it's probably about, I don't know, 15 years ago. And that made him stay at home and listen to things. And he listened again to it, and he said, he called me up and he said, you know what? This is really pretty. Let's release it.
Oh,
I had always saved it because I thought, I'm going to put this out someday, you know. So that,
yeah.
and then there was with Ross Tompkins, that was a very, you know, kind of straight singing of standards, right? But still flexible because he's such an amazing accompanist. And that was after my first sister died. So that was kind of an emotional time. As a matter of fact, I listened back to that record. I had a lot of vibrato through that whole thing, which is not particularly my style, but I think it was. And there was one song that was my sisters and I had recorded on a cassette tape. Good Night, Sweetheart. I don't know if you remember hearing
I
it.
do remember this.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I put it on the record, and then
Yes, I
sang it with
remember
Ross.
that. Yes.
And it was very difficult to get through recording that song, but I left that on there because, you know, it was great to do.
Yeah.
And so that was really nice. And then of course there's the Ted Green thing, which, you know, that's a whole epic tale in itself, you know. So I'll just be brief about this. So Ted Green, for those of you who don't know, was a legendary guitar player who had a style. He played bass, chords, and melody at the same time. And he was a very smart guy. and he couldn't say right without saying left. He was, he was really like comparative and very admired by a lot of people. And I knew about him when I was at Berkeley because when I was at Berkeley, it was a small community actually. It wasn't that huge, and there were mostly guitar players. So Ted Green was on the lips of everybody. When I came to LA, I met him at Dante's, where I was a waitress, and he actually fainted from the volume of the music. He wasn't playing, he was listening. And then I found out, oh, Ted Green. And I said, oh, do you want to get together and play? And he said, yeah. I didn't know that he hadn't been playing out hardly at all. And we built up something. I put up 3 signs, and this was basically my first artsy gig in LA. When I got there, there was no standing room. And it was like, oh my God. So, make a long story short, after he passed away, I had some video of a gig that we did much later at the place that's now Vibrato, but it used to be Rocco's. So he and I did a gig there, and it was probably about 20 years ago, actually. So I had some video from that, and I also had some audio from another gig that we had done. So I put that out as a DVD and a CD. And he wouldn't have appreciated it because he thought he wasn't good enough.
Oh, wow.
Incredible.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And don't you love, I mean, the older you get, don't you love the idea of more and more space that is afforded by the duo of any kind?
Yes.
Yeah, it's just
I
such
love
a
it.
beautiful thing.
I love it. And that kind of leads me into talking about Fish to Birds,
Yeah.
Fish to Birds is our 7-piece a cappella vocal improv group. Every now and then we'll add somebody in, like Brad Dutz or somebody like that. And it's a beautiful expression of the space. There's space, and each of us are in it. And then we have certain forms, like, for instance, sometimes we'll join together to harmonize and then break off into something else, or there'll be kind of a line that goes through it, and all of us will be doing different things and then hook into the line and then break away. And it's really exactly what you said. The space is like, that's what's so obsessive. It's like I'm obsessed with it. We all are obsessed with keeping it together because it feels so good to be in that.
The track on your chamber piece, what's the name of your chamber?
The jazz chamber, that record, yeah.
That is such a hip addition on there with having Fish to Birds on it, right? That was
That is
very
one of my
cool.
favorites. That's
Yeah,
definitely one of my favorite cuts. It's
yeah.
really long.
The other cut that's my favorite cut is the Kate McGarry one that you guys did together.
Beautiful.
Oh, it's so beautiful.
I know, I agree. That's so beautiful. That one was arranged by Dori Amarillo, and Kate and I, we almost sound like the same person, it's beautiful. And the Fish to Birds thing, I just have to tell how that came about because that was so cool. So I'm a big fan of Benny Maupin's, and this one song, Message to Prez, was really a song that attracted me and also perfect for Fish to Birds to fool around on. And because it's kind of groovy. And what Benny does is he writes these relatively short heads, and then his whole band just takes off on them, right? So we had this head, and we went into the studio and we worked it. And Bevan Manson, who's a genius, he took it and he actually separated it into 3 movements. Then he orchestrated it, and then we invited Benny Maupin to play over it.
Oh,
And it was, yeah, that's one of my favorite cuts. I just love it. And we even have a backdoor cut, which I should send to you, where Bevan is rapping
oh,
about
I
politics.
love that.
It's very funny.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it had this kind of spontaneous feel about it too, which, I mean, the way you're describing it, it started out that way, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so let's see. I've got a couple of other questions here. Oh, let me say, Cathy, this is from Anthony Cucina.
Uh-huh.
Could you please talk about what your vision was in starting all of these interviews?
Oh, sure. Hi, Anthony. It's interesting. I keep mentioning this over and over when I'm interviewing people. One thing that I love about these interviews is showing the listening audience that life is about walking, walking forward, one foot in front of the other. And over and over and over again, you hear this from out of people's mouths. It's even if they don't say it exactly like that, that's what it is. You know, it's and it almost makes me weep, that idea. It's such a it's such a it's this concept that it's a truth. That's what it is. It's truth. That's why it makes me weep. Because it's how to it's how to live. It's how to move forward in life. It's how to succeed at what you want to do. It's it's the answer. Instead of stopping and breaking down at that spot or thinking about what you had done before or wondering whether to go forward, it's just put one foot in front of the other. In the beginning, when I started, really and truly, I thought I felt an immediate. I started it pretty early, like mid-March, and I felt an immediate shrinkage of my space, because gigs, workshops, lessons, all of that stuff, going out to hear people. And I thought, well, maybe I'll come on Facebook Live for a half hour and just talk and have people, talk and have discussion. And the very first day, Sina E showed up, and I said, "Oh, Sina, you want to be on with me?" And so we got her on, and it turned out to be like a 2-hour conversation. And then I thought, well, that felt good. I think I should do that. And and then I started making my list of people, which is like endless, right? We know millions, well, I won't say millions, but definitely thousands of people.
Yeah.
And perhaps over 1 million people. I don't know how many people we know from our lives. And this is everybody, but people like us who are always working with different people too. And so the list was wonderful, and all kinds of people were happy to come on and share, share information with the broad general public and have the comfortable hang and people and it was good for them. People got introduced to them too, and so again, Sonny, like I think you and I can honestly say that we enjoy things that we help ourselves, but we also help others too. Those are the actions that you and I are attracted to, and so it became obvious that was what it was.
That's so cool, Cathy. And think about also where you started. I mean, look at everything got better and better. The quality got better.
Oh, true. Because at first, weren't you on the iPad? Weren't you on the iPad?
Phone, and we couldn't. For some reason, my internet was bad, and it was a phone on a music stand, I think. Sometimes from teaching for so long and teaching in university programs,
Yeah.
it reminds me of this, that some students would walk in with overflowing with talent. I mean, natural given talent that was crazy. And then there was this kid that would walk in, and every day they practice, and every day they learn, and every day they come in prepared, and every day they were disciplined, and they were practicing that, putting one foot in front of the other with clarity and discipline and some joy. And by the end of the 4 years, they had completely passed by the person with talent that sort of a lot of times would just fall off the rails because they were so used to getting by on their talent that they didn't know how to get their discipline in line and figure out how to live an artistic life more,
Yeah. 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 You have to be You have to be. I don't know. There's a lot of words, a lot of adjectives that we could use, but courageous is one that comes to mind. You know, you have to be courageous and committed, and ooh, two C words. I wonder if I could make a thing out of that.
Crazy.
Crazy.
Okay, so this brings me to just a few notes that I took for myself. So I love this. And all of these quotes from you on your website sort of tie into this. And I'd love you to talk about this. Um, I started experimenting with my own states of mind and decided that one was responsible for one's own existence. Responsibility both for the good and for the bad was challenging, but I came to the conclusion that if I could confront anything and take responsibility for anything, then anything was possible.
Wow, I said some good shit there,
You
man.
said some good shit. And may I quote Cathy one more time?
Mhm.
You were talking about what you learned from your sisters and what you learned from Berkeley, and then you said this, and it just ties into what you were saying. You said, "I taught myself about fearlessness." Would you talk about that?
Yeah, so interesting. Yeah, it's interesting because partly because yesterday I had a cranial adjustment, a sacrocranial adjustment, which I've never gotten before, and the woman was very, very empathic, you know, and she was the kind of person who, when she says something to you, you don't mind that she's saying something to you, you know, maybe commenting on who you might be or what you might be thinking. But she, one of the things she said was, "Oh, I see. You're fearless." I was like, "Yeah, I guess I am. I don't know. You know, I whatever." But the thing is, um, there's, you know, it's that doesn't come singularly. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's attached to other things. They all have this thread of connectivity. And I mean, that quote that you said before about taking responsibility, you know, being able to confront something, to look at it, and to take responsibility for it. Boy, I really think that's the answer to a lot, a lot. And so out of that, there's right fearlessness is definitely attached to that, right? Because you have to be a little bit fearless to confront anything and to take responsibility, you know, because taking responsibility is not for wusses, you know.
No, but but it's the only way to have sort of peace and equanimity in relationships too, right?
Yes,
That take is to take responsibility for your contributions, good and bad.
I could not agree with you more.
Yeah.
Yeah, yep.
So what about this? Oh, this goes into, well, I
I know there's something like 97 comments.
there's so many, it's lovely, 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 lovely. So nice to hear about the blah, blah, blah. Um, oh, this is a nice one, especially I think for our lovely students and not beginners, but people that are starting the adventure of being on stage and performing. Do you ever feel overwhelmed or have stage fright or stage anxiety?
Um, yes, the answer is yes. And it's not a consistent thing and it comes in different forms. I remember one time I was singing at the LA County Art Museum when they had it on the inside. You know, it was really nice in there, and I was feeling kind of lightheaded, and and I was nervous, and this was before I actually sang, and I remember at that time I used to study and think about being outside of my body a lot, right? And I realized, luckily actually, that I was outside of my body and that I could operate my body anyway. And that I reminded myself, oh, I know that feeling. I do it all the time. And that was fine. I had the greatest concert after that. So there are all these different ways that it appears, and I deal with it. More in recent years, about 2 years ago, I started taking lessons from a new teacher who really has helped me a lot. And before that, because I have this chronic cough that I've had for years, I think my body had really, not been breathing. And of course, without breath, you can't sing. And so my voice really wasn't operating the way I like it. And so when I would go to do live gigs, that would always be a consideration in the back of my mind. And so I feel like my voice is finally getting back to a strength that I can depend on. Also, Larry Kuntz, speaking of Larry Kuntz, said something that changed my life as well. A few years ago, I was asking him, sometimes I like to ask instrumentalists how they practice, what they think of. And I asked him what he was practicing. And he said, Kath, that's how he talks. I always like to say that. Kath, he said, I practice what I have to practice, but I practice with joy.
Oh,
That changed.
yeah.
It changed my life.
Oh, yes. I love that. Thank you, Larry. I'm stealing that, by the way.
I think you should.
I always, I tell my students and talk about my students, it's like you practice with performance energy and you practice with performing intent and in communication. You don't
Yes.
practice like this, la la la, la. You
Yeah.
practice communicating and intentionality going across space, but that just says it better. Yeah, I practice
Well,
it after
it's
practice, but I
it's the
practice.
same thing though. What you just said? It's the exact same thing, except that it's a simpler. It's a boiled down, simpler idea. Joy.
Yeah, joy.
Yeah.
Practice with joy. Hello.
And that changed my life. When I was out singing after that, and I would start to get heady, I would redirect my thinking to joy, and like I so feel, there's all these connections, right? So what is good? This is a lesson. It's good in life. It's good in vocal technique, and it's good in singing, and singing jazz specifically. This communicating, this movement. You can't stop. You have to put one foot in front of the other. You have to move. You have to have joy. Joy is a great carrier for that.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I I always think in my life, like the sort of the same three things that you're talking about. It's like my spiritual life bows up, my musical life bows up, my personal life bows up, my spiritual life. And that the three of them, if I'm learning something in a certain area, and I'm going to add in now my pottery life, right? Because they all sort of do this and lift each other up.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful what you said.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I actually wrote a booklet, and I spoke to somebody, I can't remember who, but I spoke to somebody who's a writer on this show. And I was saying that, so I wrote this booklet on the idea that what I just said, that there's a lesson, and it actually works in jazz, it works in voice technique, and it works in life, right? And it always fascinates me like that. You can see it in students all the time. But so during this period of time, I thought, oh, this would be a good time to get out the booklet again, and try and finish it up, which I have done over the years, because I wrote this years ago. So I read the initial book part, and it was good. I was so in the, I was so with the muse. And then I read following attempts to elongate it, and they were not in the same room. And I told this person, and he said, great, just put it out as a book. That part, and then you can always do a second book on it, if you want. And I was like, oh, yeah, why didn't I think of that? So yeah, I really want to get that together because as I said, I was with the muse at that moment.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yes. And and that sort of leads me to one of the questions from, let's see, who is this from? I'm sorry, I don't know, but we're already doing it. But he said, would you talk about your spirituality in your music? Well, that's kind of what we're doing, right? Oh,
Yeah.
I have another quote that might,
Okay.
hey, lady. Um, by the way, Ronnie would say there was another prong to that thing, and he would say golf.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But it's so true, the things that we focus on in music as artists and beings are the same things that you're focusing on in any pursuit. Like, let's ask you about this. You said this on your website. I think you were talking about vocal technique or the voice. Balancing is not force. Balance is focus.
Yeah, well, that's another one of those things that goes across whatever you're doing, from golf to singing jazz. Yeah, balance. I mean, that's what we're all trying to do here, right? We're all trying to get balanced.
Yeah.
Jeez. And life just unbalances you. And when you have focus, and even the quality of focus, matters, doesn't it? It's like focus can be very analytical, or focus can be very Zen-like, or, so the word focus and the idea of focus has a few different layers too. But regarding the question, I don't know. Let's see. I'm not even sure how to separate the two. I've felt for many years that specifically jazz was my religion. I really felt like jazz was my religion because a religion to me should bring you closer to God, should connect you to God, and it's a practice, and it's a spiritual practice, and so jazz. I mean, anything that you would do. It's not just this, but for me particularly, it is jazz, or it's what I do. It's the music that I do, and so so I can't really help but feeling. It also has to do with this whole stuff I talk about entering into the music, the aesthetic universe, right? The music room. As soon as the first note hits, you put your hand on the doorknob, you open it up, you step into the room, and you're there with everybody who's creating the music, right? It's an aesthetic universe, and it is the God universe, and it's the magic universe, and it's whatever you want to call it. But once you're in there, how can that not be spiritual? It's totally spiritual, right?
Yeah.
And if you stay there, then the whole experience is like that, and it's a
And
gift.
look at the level of communication too when you're in the aesthetic room. The level is rarefied, right? It's so uplifted. So, well, it's not all the time,
No.
but depending on who you are communicating with, right?
Yeah.
So this leads me to a question, and maybe I'll share just a little bit of a personal story, and that is, it sort of goes back to the idea of being overwhelmed or anxious on stage. My daddy was a Methodist minister.
Yeah.
Right, so I was raised in the church. We sang in the church, we played in the church, I beat my sister up in the pews on the second balcony in the church. And so my daddy was also a natural academic and extremely bright. And he would try and pull in the laws of physics and chemistry into the godlike state. And, we had all kinds of crazy people in our house.
Yeah.
Well, when I was coming up in my music and I was nervous about being on stage, I realized that that music and communicating through music and jazz, again, particularly, was my purpose, right?
Yeah.
And that my purpose was to reach out into my audience and pull them into this sphere that was my intimate sphere. And my sermon, my preaching was just bringing them into my home and making them comfortable and share beauty and this communication that we share together. So pull them into the sphere that we were all doing. And that got rid of my fear and or of, am I good enough, or am I cute enough, or am I short enough, or whatever. And did you have any sort of moment like that, or a purpose that developed as you started growing in that sort of guided you that way?
Not like yours. Yours was pretty dramatic. Um, I think that along the way that I had moments of that, um, and I recognized what felt good to me, and that what you just described was the feeling of what felt good, and I kept doing that. And I know for many years growing up, like in our young years, like our 20s, I was definitely a ballad singer more because that's where I felt that. Um, and there was one thing I was trying to think of. Oh yeah, as a matter of fact, this is around the time you and I met. So Sonny and I met at Disneyland or wherever, but we both sang at Simply Blues, which was on top of a building at Vine and Sunset, right? Sunset?
It was Sunset and Vine, yeah, right down
Yeah,
from Motown Records.
like literally diagonally across from
Right.
Motown. Yeah. So I was working with Louis Ball, a black piano player. And the reason why I say a black piano player was because the Motown people would come in after work. And boy, I was picking up, at first, I was picking up a lot of attitude. And I mean, I knew a lot of it was probably who's this white chick singing with this black piano player, and lots of stuff. And I would go home so exhausted. And the one good thing about our husbands at that time were that they were very strong and they were very spiritually inclined, and they made an effect on both of us as far as our own strength.
Yeah.
And so my husband Gus at the time, he said, "Okay, here's what you do. I want you to create an imaginary boundary around you and the piano player. Nothing can flow in, but you can flow out."
That's beautiful.
Yeah, and that's what I did, and it changed everything because I was no longer receiving any kind of flows that were at all weird, and I could create beauty with Lewis and send it out.
That's great. There's one thing I learned on that gig too, and we did that gig 4 nights a week. Do you remember that?
Yes, man,
4 nights a week.
you were smoking, man. I only did
And
it.
it was with Hernan Sanchez Reynoso. And when the wind would blow, that building would do this, and the lights would be swinging back and forth. We're going, oh crap. A couple things. First of all, Al Jarreau used to come up to that
Oh
gig.
yeah, totally.
And Al Jarreau, and I'm going, oh my God, it's Al Jarreau. And he was so lovely. And also the Motown execs, I can't remember his name, Terry, that used to be the association. Remember the association and
Yeah,
Cherish and
yeah,
those.
yeah.
And because of that gig, I started doing singer-songwriter demos at Motown, which is completely hysterical to me.
Wow,
Hello.
wow.
Yeah, I did a lot of them. But the thing that I learned there was that place was rocking all the time. It was loud, and it was my mission. It was my mission, like, "Arr," talk about focus. It was this kind of focus that I was going to get that audience to pay attention to me, right? And I don't know if you went through anything like that, but and I would get so vocally tired and exhausted at the end of that gig. And somebody said, Sonny, quit, sing softer. sing mezzo piano. You're working way too hard. And so I did. I just started backing up. And the more I backed up and stayed within myself, the more the room got quiet and responsive.
Yeah.
And it was similar to your realization. It's like, well, yeah, if you push with force, whether it's vocal technique or whatever, you will get it back in return, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
You know, the other thing that actually, one of my teaching tools that I've used and, you know, a lot over the years actually came from the experience that I described, which is there's three universes. So the first singer, you know, the first universe is you, right? You have to have your shit together. You have to have your voice together. You have to know the material, you know, all of that.
yep.
Second universe is you and the musician or musicians. Okay, now we're talking about, you know, the second area, right? And everything that happens in there is crucial because that's what people are listening to. The third universe expands to the audience. And so, a lot of times, especially young singers, will do it the other way around. They'll start with the audience, you know.
Yeah.
So it's a good.
Can I steal that?
Can
May
you?
may I steal that?
Yes, you may.
That is wonderful, actually. And when you put it that way, you can correct things that are not working correctly. Right?
Yeah,
Yeah. Wow, I love that.
yeah.
I love that.
I'm checking out some of the comments too. Judy Nieback is making a bunch of comments. She said, "We're such a beautiful community of singers, and also we were kicked in the butt by other singers and must try not to compare ourselves."
Oh,
So true, right? I mean, it's a lifelong process. And I was just saying to somebody the other day, like, it's interesting that um, it took years and years, like pretty much 60 years before we get to the point where we go, yeah, I don't really care what they're thinking.
oh,
Right? And we still do, but that's old stuff underneath. But there's something that happens when you do get older that you finally go, yeah, I don't really care.
well, and I also think, don't you think that after a certain point, you know where you are in the universe.
Yeah.
You aren't as good as you once thought you were, and you're not as bad as you once thought you were. You have a realistic appraisal, and it doesn't matter that much. You know, it's like, go do your thing, baby. Life is not that long. I did notice Judy Newmack, Judy Newmack. Judy Niemek is here, and I love this thing that she says. She says, Gary Foster told me in 1976 regarding improvising, move yourself every day.
Oh,
It's pretty, and it's pretty obvious in singing, hard to do without the joy, right?
yeah.
So I love that.
That's great. I love that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, there was a book I read that was saying that that all superfluous emotion comes from only two emotions at the bottom, which live in your heart. One is fear, and one is love. And boy, I really liked that idea
Wait,
because
say that again. I didn't quite understand that. Say it again.
well, he says, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, and I forget the name of this. I think it was a book that Deepak Chopra suggested, but all emotion comes from two basic emotions that literally live in the heart muscle, and one is fear, and one is love.
Oh, yes.
And that's been really helpful, actually. That idea, when I read it, I was like, wow, that really simplifies a lot of things, you know, a lot of worry and stress, because all you have to do is observe, like, okay, either in yourself or others, where does that come from?
Yeah. And
You
to
know?
simplify it like that, that's beautiful.
Yeah, and singing and making music and making art, it would be nice if it came from the love part, you know,
Yeah.
rather than the fear. But although maybe the fear has to be expressed as well, you know, for
Well,
people.
and then also, I love the Buddhistic idea that we're all just in the river. and we're riding in the river, and sometimes you're going to be afraid, and sometimes you're going to be angry. It's okay. It's like, that's all right. Just ride on with the fear, and you'll get through to the other side,
Yeah.
to the love.
Yeah, well, another thing I was just reading in the book that never seems to end, the Deepak Chopra book, How to Find God, by my bed. The last thing I was reading was about um, the Indian idea of soul. So the Indians believe there are two souls, and I forget the names of them, but one soul is is. It's God. It's the essence of God. There's no analyzers. There's no thinking. There's no right or wrong. That's us, right? That's me. That's one of my souls. The other of my soul is all of this that we're using right now. It's all of my personality. It's my hopes, my dreams, my actions. My I'm trying to get better as a human being, right? And that's all the actions, everything that comes, along with that is in that soul. But the other soul, I mean, when that soul dies and goes away, the other soul is still there. It's the essence of God. So it's actually quite forgiving. It makes all of the stuff that we do forgivable. We're trying, we're working on it.
That's beautiful.
Isn't that nice?
That's really beautiful.
Yeah.
I love the simplicity of it's like bringing things down to a basic too. It's like the simpler the better, like
Yes.
Shakespearean analysis, right? It's like bring
Right.
it back down and simpler, and then it's just beautifully comprehensive or comprehensible.
Yes. Yes. We can use it.
Yeah. Oh, I have a good question for you here, Kath.
Hmm.
What are some things, since you've started these interviews, that you would like to improve on?
Yeah. I bet that's from Anthony or something, right? Or
It is from
Taylor.
Anthony. It's from Anthea Cusina.
I know his questions. Um, I actually don't have an answer to that because um, the the growths and changes in what has occurred happened so organically. And like you said, like you were saying, at first I was using, an iPad, and you were looking at the iPad here, and then I knew I had to confront, learning Zoom, and I did, and then all about jazz. Michael said, we want to stream what you're doing, but I can't use Facebook. I have to use YouTube. So there are platforms that connect you to both, and so I had to learn that, and I started having music a lot more on the show, like playing people's music, which I enjoy doing that. And but as far as I don't know at this moment in time what I would improve on, actually.
I have
Um,
to say something. This is hysterical because
yeah.
Jay Clayton is here,
Oh,
and
hi, Jay.
says, and Jay says, nothing to improve. Let it flow.
That is so Jay, right? Oh my God. That's
Hallelujah,
so
sister.
Jay.
Speak it.
What does she say? Oh, she has this Jay saying, check this out, Sonny. This is Jay. Is everything all right? Oh no. Is anything all right? That's her. Is anything all right? That's such a Jay,
Oh, I love
a
that.
Jay joke.
And honestly, isn't that something that's happening during this COVID time too? That you don't realize certain things about yourself, good and bad. It's
Yeah,
hard to have perception of yourself at all times.
yeah.
Well, I thought I was a lot more laid back person than I am not, I'm not. I'm not laid back.
It's hard to believe.
I'm a little controlling. I like things neat. I like things tidy. I like you, right? But what I've realized, it's been so delightful to relax.
I love how you
And
said that.
relax,
Relax.
baby. And to in Jay's words, which I'm going to write in my studio, just nothing to improve, let it flow. And it's happening. It's happening in my garden. It's happening in my relationship with Ronnie. It's happening in music. It's happening in clay. And it is
Yeah.
sort of a lovely thing in life, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm so glad you talked about that. That's really true. Um, so if in this period of time, if one can uh, achieve moments of not being too worried, you know, then they can actually go into that space and idea and really enjoy it. And that's the blessing of what's happening right now, you know.
Yeah.
Um, I know it's so hard for some people and they're just freaking out, and I really feel bad for them. And I honestly, I don't freak out too much. I do occasionally, but I know how to deal with it. I go outside in the garden, or I sit down and talk to Gary, or I go play music, you know. And so I'm fortunate that I know I can recognize it and deal with it, you know. And I know some people aren't that fortunate, you know. They what for whatever reason, you know. And yeah, it's really interesting. Really brings to mind lots of other things. I mean, this taking responsibility and confronting who you are, um, and that's why I said it's not only hard taking responsibility for the bad, but it's also you have to take responsibility for the good too. And in that, by that I mean, like let's say for me, for instance, very specifically, I have seen myself over the years, especially when it become talking about race. Okay, so I'm Jewish, so I've definitely had my share of some prejudice, and but of course, my black friends have had more, and then you know Latin friends have had some, and not to leave out the general white race. You know that you know there's prejudice all over the place, and so. Um, in some of the things I've observed about myself is that I have a tendency to be naive about certain things. And when I was growing up, you know, I lived in a nice little neighborhood, you know, we were kind of medium low income. There was one black family, there was one communist family. My mother was very open and inviting. So, and she always taught us that, you know, the opposite of prejudice. And, and, but so I grew up like that. Now, that's all good. But then, uh, and so that's a good thing, right? But I also have to take responsibility for that to actually educate myself further and to see what's really happening in the world. You know, I could have just, I guess, not gone out and see the prejudice of what was happening, although it was, you know, even in that naive, good person who I was, I still could look around and see certain situations, you know. So yeah, I mean it's also interwoven, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And it's so interesting to hear you say that because I grew up similarly. You know, I was a Methodist minister's kid, but my daddy's best friend was an African American man who adopted two little girls from Senegal. And we always hung together. And then at our church group, we would have, we'd trade, like we'd go to a Jewish synagogue and learn about their ceremonies, and they'd come to our youth group
Right,
and learn about
right.
that. And so it was this sort of lovely cohesive thing. And I feel I didn't know, I mean, I was naive. I didn't know that there was prejudice against Jewish people.
Yeah.
And I couldn't fathom it at first. It was like, well, why? I mean, how can you tell? You know, what are you talking about? You know, so yeah, you having to educate yourself. You know, the beauty of it is that that's the way children are.
Yeah,
Children are naive to all the silliness
Yeah.
and the complexities of our prejudice and stuff. They have to be taught that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see here. Do you want to take another question, love?
Sure. Um, hmm,
Well, oh, guess who's here? I mean, there's so many beautiful people.
I
Can
know.
I just name a few people that are here to see you? Can you see
Sure. Sure.
Kendra Shank, Mark Baldridge,
Yep.
Peter, Peter,
Eldritch.
Peter Eldridge jumped in, and Anthony, of course. Kathy Cousins is here. Oh, Shelby Flint.
I know. I saw that, Michelle.
Hi, Shelby. Talk about a formative singer when we were growing up. Oh my God.
Talk about bringing God, the God force in, and affecting people.
I mean, let's just have fun and talk about $2 bills. Remember
Yeah.
when
Oh,
Shelby, with her band at Dante's, we would all go and be transfixed, and because she was just the goddess. Can you sing? Can you hum a Shelby Flint tune off the top of your head?
yes.
Do
Da,
it.
da, da, something we may never know.
Oh, catapult in time, no Mercury, there you go. I
Right.
just get so high, I watch the planets spin below. For that one?
Totally.
Oh,
Yeah.
and then
Or
she would,
Hound Dog used to make me leave me in a puddle of tears. Do you remember
oh,
Hound Dog?
I don't know.
It was a ballad about this woman who really behaved badly, screamed at her children and drank, and she compared her to an old hound dog who was really wanting like a pat, and ah, oh my God.
Well, the thing is that Shelby record with Crystal Cave.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, ba 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 ba
Uh,
ba 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 do da ba ba boo ba. It, and I can hear her voice, her young voice, is
I know
giving
her voice
that little
beautiful.
cry.
Uh-huh.
And we would go together. We'd hang out, and
Yeah. The
that
$2 bills was a
was a really
great hang.
beautiful, formative time. And she was a perfect formative person for us to.
Yeah, she really made a big impression.
Yeah.
And that was a period of time when a lot of people were making great impressions. We had the Comeback in Venice, which
Oh,
was, I mean, all kinds of people were showcasing there. And it was very community feeling. The $2 bills, the Comeback in, the Blah Blah Cafe. We were all artists doing original music.
yep.
And that was a really strong
What was
formative.
the other one in the valley where you got married?
Oh yeah, David Abari's place.
Um,
Well, after it was called One for LA or something.
that's not what I
Afterwards,
remember. Yeah.
no. Oh, the Sound Room.
The Sound Room.
Yeah,
Yeah. Sound
yeah,
Room.
that was a
And
cool
Al Jarreau and Diane Reeves and Billy
child.
Childs.
Lava Lee was also a great room.
Oh, yeah, Lava Lee. Kevin sang a lot at Lava Lee.
Yes, she did. She was a big part of that scene, Kevin Littell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's see, my dear. What else would you like to talk about?
Let's see. Are there any other questions?
Do you see more questions?
I think Paul Jost had a question a long time ago, which I can't reach all the way back. I think he said, who was the arrangers on Straight Ahead from the UK?
Oh,
And so Straight Ahead, that was my last record. And what happened was I actually could not submit it for a Grammy because it had been started 7 years ago
oh,
in England. And the limit is 5 years. And so, so 7 years ago, I had a friend. Well, so this is a little bit of a long story, but when I don't think I was 21 yet. Yeah, I was probably 19 or 20. I had a road gig in Pittsburgh. And it was the one and only time I had a singing and dancing act. 3 girls. We had outfits. you know, bell bottoms and midriffs showing and all that. And yeah, I'm trying to make this short. So anyway, we had this act. I forget our name, but we got a job at a supper club in Pittsburgh, and it was a whole show. I mean, there were comedians, there was dancers, you know, and then there was us, and you know, so in the middle of this gig, you know, we were there. I don't know how long we were there, probably a few months or something. In the middle of this gig, who should come through but um, ah, uh, Maynard Ferguson.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so his band comes through, and like for 2 nights or something. And in that band was an English saxophone player, and he actually met and married one of the dancers in my show. And then several years later, I moved to LA, and he was in LA. And I can't remember if he had separated from his wife at that point, but he did separate from his wife at that point, at somewhere near there. And but I guess she went back. She was probably living in England at the time, or I really don't know all of that side of the story. But anyway, he and I met again. We were both single, and we went out. His name was Andy McIntosh, and he was a real one of the premier alto players around, you know. And so move forward, you know, many years to 7 years ago, and Andy had contacted me on Facebook, and flew me over there and recorded uh, all the tracks to Straight Ahead from the UK, and so there was a problem, which was there were several problems. One problem was I was totally sick. My voice was really like sick. And the only song that actually we saved was, thank God, was the song that Norma Winstone guested on,
Oh,
and which was Hippodyville, was a John Abercrombie song that I had written lyrics to while I was in college. A really cool tune. And so, and then also it was in the possession of the engineer because Andy had not finished paying for it. So that's the real skinny on that story. But so fast forward, my friend and executive producer Dan Davila said, you know, we really should get that out, you know, out of Hawk, you know. And I said, well, actually, that's what started the Jazz Chamber. He said that to me first. That was the first record he instigated on that. And I said, well, it has some problems. We'd have to really put a lot of effort into it. I'd rather just do a new project. And that's how the Jazz Chamber project came out.
no.
But anyway, so jump to last year. And so we got that out of Hawk. And I brought it over to John Leftwich. Because John Leftwich is a great arranger, engineer, musician. And I've known him for years, and I trust his opinions and his quality of production. And so that was a good move. So we brought in some new players to add to it, like Carrie Frank on B3, which was perfect because it was more of a straight ahead project. Brought in Cathy Buckingham, and yeah, and then we brought in a few like background singers, and I redid most of the material on voice, and so the arrangements really were first and foremost Andy McIntosh's, but then John added on to the arrangements. So I would have to say they co-arranged really everything because of that.
And hasn't he, did you say that Andy has since passed on? He passed
Yeah,
away, didn't he?
yeah, he passed away probably, well, maybe 5 years ago, something like that. Yeah.
Well, your voice, no wonder. Okay, because I thought your voice on that project has a clarity to it and a strength to it. And did you do that recently?
Yes, last year.
So talk about that. Talk about your vocal journey. I mean, I know you have a little bit with your teacher, but talk about the changes you're feeling and what has increased your knowledge and just strengthened your voice and stuff.
Yeah. Well, definitely in the time period that I said, a few years ago when I met my teacher, Stephen Cronauer is his name, and when I met him, I was seriously thinking of not singing anymore because when I would sing, especially in public, I felt like I didn't feel that joyful fluidity, of a sound, of a voice that can come out and resonate and make tone and sound good. And it was just too much for me. It was too much attention on it, too effortful, and not enough winning. And then I found Stephen, and it was quite different. So Sonny and I and Kevin Latow studied with this woman, Helen McComas, and she kind of saved our lives in a particular period. She was a really good teacher, and we all basically taught from her method, actually, to our students. Then we all developed in our own separate ways. But so it was very, no, I won't say very different, but he didn't really talk about this. We were focused on the vocal cords, and he wasn't. He was more focused on breathing, which frankly I had never focused on in all of my life.
Wow.
So once that started settling in and I started using it, I really got how the breath, I really understood for the first time what breath support meant. And not that it was like a breath support, not like that, not at all, it's more like breath support. And then along with the Larry Kuntz idea of
Wait, I want to interject and say I love the idea of underpinning of breath or breath management, but the underpinning, like, rather than that old-fashioned
support. Yeah.
which was prevalent when we were coming up.
Yeah, and the word management is that, yeah, it's just such a much better word than breath support. Yeah. Yeah. But at that time, when I started studying, that was around the time when I talked to Larry too about this joy. So it interwove so well. I started practicing with joy, and feeling the things that Stephen was telling me. So now I feel, of course, I don't have too much, times to experience, the actual singing to see how it feels, right? And but I will say that when I do have those moments of availability that I can sing, I'm feeling a much different experience. And it feels and sounds different inside me.
Yeah.
And I'm going more towards those singers that I've admired, technically speaking, who seem like this is their body while they're singing.
Yeah.
And their voice is doing whatever they want, and their heart is directing it, but they're not, there's nothing doing it like that at all. And so I feel like I'm at the doorway of that. I feel like it feels really good. Now, some people, you and I, of course, can talk about this in detail, and we know what we're talking about. Some people watching me would have never even imagined that I would have been thinking like that,
Oh, right. No, I know what you're saying. No, of course not.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
You're a consummate pro. And but well, we talked about this before. Uh-oh, I lost you for a second. Are you still there?
I am still
Oh,
here.
there we are. Good. All of a sudden my email popped up.
Oh,
But the idea of coordination of all of those aspects of what's happening in the breath and in the larynx and in the resonators, right? And balancing that, you use that balance as focus. And I was thinking about that with regard to vocal technique. Like there's all different kinds of focus. There's like this kind of focus, like
yeah,
laser focus, right? It's
right.
very intense, and
Yeah,
it is tense.
yeah,
But there's also the soft focus that you get if you know how to ride a horse well.
yeah.
you're like this, right?
Yeah.
And that's the way I think we need to be as singers. It's like we're energized and bouncy and buoyant, but it's not tension oriented and it's all coordinated and lovely, but it's got this beautiful flow in our bodies. And that's what we always aspire to is the freedom, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. And again, all of that, all of the same stuff in life and singing jazz and singing technique, it all relates to each other. It's we're looking for those things that you just said in all aspects, right?
Right.
And we want to be free, and we also want to be how you just described. Riding a horse is a good example. You do not want to fall off the horse, so you have to have your shit together as far as knowing how to ride the horse. But once you do that, and the horse is cantering, and you're on the canter, and it's heaven. It's what it is. It's beautiful.
I was just thinking about what you were talking about with the three universes
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
So if you take that analogy a little and add that in, you can't ride a horse with that intense focus because the horse tenses up and his mouth gets hard and then he'll start resisting you and pulling on you. But if you soften your focus like a horse's focus, which is soft focus, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the same thing when you're directing a band or you're a leader of the band.
Yeah.
I think I had to learn that the hard way because my natural inclination is to be intensely focused.
Yeah.
And so if I'm intensely focused and the leader of the band, my bass player gets really uptight. It's because of me. And I'm still learning. Like it's like, yeah, you can be focused, but you can be joyful. And then the band will feel joyful.
That's funny. I can just imagine that knowing you.
But you seem like you have that secondary element naturally, that you don't get uptight or upset or you don't react to negative situations. You seem like you let them flow. Is that true? You flow. You
Yeah,
flow.
I think I do. I think that's innately in my. I think it's in my nature,
Yeah.
and I would rather choose to be happy than uncomfortable, and that's part of it in there. There's like a decision in there. That I operate from, and I mean, there's definitely obviously been times when it's been rough, but yeah, I want. And actually, that is something that I've noticed when I get up with a band. The first thing I do, and you probably do this too, first thing I do is say hi to each band member, and shake hands if I have to, so there's like, now there's a universe, now there's a relationship. Yeah. And so, but there's always, there's always the drummer who's overplaying, or the piano player playing too many notes, or yeah, there's always that where but I think if you flow admiration to somebody, even if they're doing something that you don't like, that works much better, making things blend, changing the vibration, than me uptight or trying to direct, right?
I know that's true. I mean, you're right. We've both had the opportunity to work with some of the jazz masters in our lifetime. And that's one thing I noticed about them is that there's a general kind of, it almost seems like they don't care. It's so relaxed and and then as soon as they hit the bandstand, an idea comes out, it's like a blaze. It's like a
Yeah.
clear shot. The intensity and clarity of the choices are so powerful. But then there's this looseness, and I think, yeah, that's the thing. That is the thing.
Yeah, that's beautifully put. That's exactly. I mean, I was talking to Roy McCurdy the other day, and I almost cried acknowledging him for, being part of that particular tribe that is elegant,
Yes.
ethical, kind. You know, there's all these beautiful words that you relate to these guys when you go see the Modern Jazz Quartet or you see Hank Jones or Roy McCurdy. That it's not just the music that you get this beautiful side of human beings, yeah, and space and what you're talking about, that laser commitment of quality.
But boldness, like it's just absolutely no question of where this idea is going. And to be on stage with someone like that is so powerful, that's loose and generous, like you said, like that sense of magnanimity.
Magnanimity. Yeah, that's a hard word to say.
Magnanimity.
Okay.
Yeah, and yet the boldness, it teaches you how to be bold that way. Like step
Yes.
up and be bold.
Yes. And without being harsh.
Yeah.
It's just what it is. And that's again going back to the it's on my mind today for another reason, but this idea of coming into situations with uh, naivety. The there's a boldness that one has to have too, because you have to be willing and able to move out of that, forward. I remember that quote of Buddy Rich's, or he was talking about that you had to have enough ego to get out of the way.
Oh, say that again. That's pretty brilliant.
Yeah, you have to have enough ego to get out of the way. That's
Wow.
deep.
That's deep, man. That is so good.
Yeah.
Well, I want to ask our viewers out there.
There's a question I see. Sorry,
Good.
Rosanna Eckert.
Oh,
Which
beautiful.
this
Hi,
is a great
Rosanna.
question. What is a song you can't sing? Either doesn't resonate with you or it belongs to someone else. Is there one? There have been. One was Star Eyes, because I always related to Carmen McRae's bossa nova version of Star Eyes, and I loved the song. So I found that the song worked as a waltz. And for me, it was great because I love jazz waltzes. And so that's actually the opening song on my jazz chamber record. And it's beautiful as a waltz. And there was another song that I recorded on Straight Ahead, which was Sermonette, which is a song written by Nat Adderley. And it's not a common, the chord structure is not that common. And when I first sang it, I thought, ooh, I love this song, but for me, I'm not doing it justice at all. And I kept trying to sing it because it was alluring to me. And finally, and somebody once said this, and I don't know, Rosanna, it might have even been you. I have to sing a song 6 times before it actually becomes.
Now, when you say sing it, do you mean perform it 6 times?
Well, somebody else asked me that too. I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a song like that too. It finally started sitting in me, and I loved it, and now I sing it whenever. Um, you know, usually for me right now, fast songs like a lot of words, a lot of notes. They're not songs that I lean towards because I don't think I do them all that well. I think I've heard other people do songs like that fabulously, and I've sung my share of fast songs, but songs like that, like a lot of words and a lot of notes, it's not really where I do my best.
Now, my thing has just cut off. I cannot
Oh,
see anymore.
well, I can look
Are
at a
there
few.
any other questions that?
Yeah, let's see. Let's
Here's
see.
one. Who are some of the inspirations
Yeah,
that you had that were game changers in your career? That's from
yeah, Anthony again.
Hi, Anthony.
Yeah, he asks these
Good
good,
question.
solid questions. Yeah. Um, I well, it was always somehow personal as well, not just music, not just listening. Although people like Weather Report, when I heard Weather Report, my brain blew apart. And that changed my life. Uh,
Which record? Which record? Was it the
uh,
first one or was it?
it was what were some of the first ones? It
Oh,
was
I can't remember.
um, I can't remember right now, but it was one of the first ones. It was very melodic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then people who I met who stood out, like when I was first here and I was working at Dante's, and there were three people who, by their treatment of me, uh, maybe firmed up certain things that I felt inside of me. One was Jake Hanna. He was a great drummer, and he was from Boston actually, and he was extremely kind to me, and it his recognition of me and acknowledgement of me meant a lot. He was a very highly respected player. Another person like that was Frank Severino, also a drummer. And he actually was the first person who basically took me into his family and, made me a family member.
Wow.
And we did some music together, and he was just a sweetheart. And then another person was County Condoli. And he and his brother used to play at Dante's a lot during that time. And they used to order Courvoisier and then tip me really well. And that wasn't the only reason I liked them. They were from that group that I was talking about, like how Roy McCurdy was. They were elegant. They were, they never came on to me. They were elegant and warm, kind, and their commitment to good music was totally apparent. So I think those kind of things really not changed my life. It, I guess, firmed up the direction of who I became or who I was going to become.
That's lovely.
I mean,
The,
and really and truly, and I say this word even just because of comparison to, more well-known people, but even people like you, right? Like you and I mean, how would our life be different if we hadn't known each other?
oh my God, Kathy.
You know?
Well, going back to the group of people,
Yeah.
Peggy Laura now, um,
Julie Kelly.
Julie Kelly, of course. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Who else?
Um,
But well, now I'm showing our age. But point being, when I first got there, I was used to my little jazz community in Phoenix, Arizona.
yeah.
They took care of me. My boys took care of me, and I took care of them. Right? We loved each other. And all of a sudden, being in this big environment where singers had a different persona, right? It was very competitive and very edgy, and they didn't
Oh,
want you really next to them.
yeah.
And then a lot of times in the session work, it was so cutthroat too. At least I found it that way.
See, I didn't really do a lot of session work. And by the way, there was Stephanie Haynes too, of
Oh,
course.
Stephanie, of course,
Yeah.
Stephanie and um,
Christensen or
Julie Christensen,
yeah.
and in the session work, I did worked on Saved by the Bell and on Solid Gold, and it
Okay.
was cutthroat.
Yeah.
So finding you guys and the kindness and the loveliness we had, and the support we had and love we had for each other, it was pretty important.
Definitely. Definitely
Yeah.
it was. Yeah. So yeah, it's hard to say, what I mean, you have these remembrances that really pop out at you strongly, right?
Mhm.
And that shifted you.
Yeah.
But it was people. You know, it was just the people, music. Yeah, definitely. When I heard various music, I was blown away. When I went to see the Modern Jazz Quartet, and I must have been 15, I was blown away. I That changed me, but also it was an acknowledgement of a certain music universe that I was drawn to. You know, I mean, the Grateful Dead changed me, changed my life dramatically. You know, I was in college. I was a Deadhead. I would go to these live concerts with my Deadhead friends, and the music, two drummers, and this floating jazz-like treatment of the music. And music, talk about an effect. Their songs had such an effect on the audience. I mean, when you said one more Saturday night, everything in your whole universe was in that, you know.
Did you go to Woodstock?
No, I was just a little young.
Yeah, I was going. I mean, it happened between my junior and senior year in high school, and a couple of my friends went, and I was just so jealous.
Yeah, I was too.
Yeah.
It did spill over, right? But still, we weren't there. But no, I've never worked with Zappa, Roland. Roland always asks if people have worked with Zappa. Actually, yesterday was a good guess because, boy, Ken Filiano is like really. Oh, Heavy Weather, Mysterious Traveler. Yes,
Oh,
Anthony.
Mysterious Traveler. That's the one. Yes.
That was it.
And
Yep.
of course, Heavy Weather too, and that tune, A Remark You Made.
Yes.
Oh, oh.
I could almost sing the songs from Mysterious Traveler.
Shall we? We can end on us singing those songs. Or Teen Town.
Oh, you're good, man. Yeah, you really can sing them.
Quick for that.
Oh gosh.
Oh, honey. Well, I guess, wow, you're right. 2 hours went by in a flash, didn't it, sweetheart?
It does, and I think maybe what I'll do is I'll go out with some music because I haven't played any music.
Before you do, may I say something on behalf of all of us who love and adore you and appreciate you? Thank you for being your 100th guest. And thank you for allowing me the privilege of interviewing you and being here with you. And clearly, by all the comments over here, you are so well loved and admired. And you've just made our whole world, musical and personal, such a richer and better place with your love and kindness and beauty. Thank you so much for everything you are and do.
Thank you, Sunny. And yeah, I adore you, and thank you for being my hostess. And I thank Catherine Bostic for coming on too, and thanks for coming online, everybody, and your comments. And love you lots. Let's keep a great state of mind in all this, and take some of these words that jump out at you, these ideas that jump out at you, and you go, yeah, I like that idea. Take them, and use them and write them down and post them, and have to lift. We all have a job to do, which is to lift each other up on vibrations, and yeah, we have to do that. Love you. Okay, what am I going to play, Sonny?
Oh, play something.
I'll play.
Dreamsville. Can you play Dreamsville?
Yeah, I think I can. Let's see. Let's see. I have to go. This might be my PR on Dreamsville instead of the song. Let me just see. Have to sit through the ads and skip ad, and maybe it is just Dreamsville. This might be a little PR on it, but
But I'm in Dreamsville, and holding you, it's a dreamy view. Just we two alone with love in dreamy Dreamsville. Time is new, we're here to love, and we do. We can see the rest of the world below us from our pink cloud. There's no boundary to this magic land as we go exploring hand in hand in dreamy Dreamsville, far away, and here we love. Here we'll stay. We can see the rest of the world below us from our pink cloud. There is no boundary to this magic land as we go exploring hand in hand in dreamy Dreamsville, far, far away, and here we love. Here we'll stay.
By listening to Larry and Josh is just gorgeous. It's nice because I don't tend to focus on myself. I because the the whole thing is so engaged together.
Yeah, it's beautiful, my love. And you did some beautiful things on it. I love at the end how it sort of goes a little bit minery too. It's like, not every dream is going to be happy and perfect. You're going to have a little bit of tension in there, guys. That was cool.
Yeah, speaking of that, I don't know. Whenever I hear that spot, and I think it's Josh playing something on the bottom. It's like a moving bass line that moves up. I don't. I can't quite tell what note they are. I know it's really an interesting sensation. Yeah, it's really
Amorphous moodiness.
yes.
Whoa.
Wow. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. I'm so glad and sunny. You know who I have on tomorrow?
Who?
Les DeMerle.
Oh my goodness. Well,
Talk
Josh
about,
Hanna recorded with Les DeMerle. My former husband recorded for not footprints. First you put your feet together, then you do a little walk.
oh, Freedom Jazz Dance.
Freedom Jazz Dance. Yeah,
Really?
yeah.
I didn't know that.
I used to sing with him all the time at the
Oh my
lighthouse.
God. Oh, I'm going to have to bring that up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wow, that's really cool. Yeah, well, anyway, this week is going to be fun. I mean, I have Calabria Photion.
Oh, what day?
That's Friday. And
Nice.
Jack Mouse, Janice Borla's husband. The drummer,
Yes,
he's from Chicago. And then
Chicago.
Sunday, I'm going to have John DeVersa.
Oh, what a great week.
Yeah, yeah. So it's going to be a good week. Thank you, Sunny Bunny.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you, Kathy. It was great. Are we still live streaming or are we done live streaming?
We're live right now, but I will be ending.
Okay, can you keep us on after you end? Or no?
Uh, I don't believe so, but I could call you back.
Okay.
I
Love you.
love you too.
Congratulations on your 100th show.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye,
Thank you for being
everybody.
here.